Hey everybody, and welcome to my first of two videos on this, the Minolta Maxxum SPXI. This is a perplexing camera to me. I could find effectively nothing online about this camera that was of any value to this video whatsoever. Or maybe it was just because it was the first Maxxum I'd ever researched and I didn't know where to look, but there did not seem to be very much information about this camera out there. In fact, it sounds like this camera is fairly rare, or at least uncommon. As far as I can tell, this is a Maxxum 3XI, which is this camera right here that's edging in on this one's video for a minute. Oops. That has been stripped down. The interface is pretty similar, with the SPXI not having this flash control button. They both have the mode button, they both have the same top shape and flappy paddle bumpers in the same places. Insofar as I can tell, the SPXI is the exact same thing as a 3XI, only that it's a spot meter camera. But we're going to do a video for this, and we'll do a video for the 3XI separately. So this is an interchangeable lens SLR. It has a spot meter. Now what that means is that only a very small part of the image in the very center of this will be used to generate 100% of the metering data. It has shutter speeds of 30 seconds to 1/2000th of a second and bulb. The viewfinder is tiny with 0.75 times magnification, meaning that what you see in the viewfinder is 75% of the size that it will be on the film, very small, and 90% frame coverage, which is really low. What that means is that if what you're seeing right now were the picture that you got back on your negative in your viewfinder, you would have 5% of the frame missing on every side. That is a lot. This has a matte focusing screen with the autofocus point indicator, and the flash on this camera syncs at 1/90th of a second. So like I said, I couldn't find much about this camera online, so there's a little bit of conjecture here based on my experience with other cameras and some research into other Minolta bodies. This was likely an entry-level camera, and I say that because it's a bit of a specialty camera, so it's hard to say for sure, but it's pretty stripped down. Like I said, I could find almost no information about this. I could not even find a manual for this camera online, but like I showed you, it's very similar to the 3XI, so a lot of what I have to say about this camera is based on the manual for the 3XI, so I really hope I'm right when I say they're the same thing. The 3XI manual lacks a lot of detail found in manuals for mid-range and advanced cameras, which makes me suspect that this and the 3XI are entry-level cameras, because advanced and mid-range level cameras have technical detail that the manual for the 3XI absolutely lacks. And this version of this camera has fewer bells and whistles than the 3XI, even though it has a similar body. This was made by Minolta Camera Company in Japan in 1991. And as far as I could tell, it was only made for 1 year. As for what it was preceded by one of the 4-digit I bodies, but I don't know which, though probably this was preceded somewhat by the 3000i. It was made concurrently with the 7XI, 3XI, 9XI, 5XI, and 2XI. And as for what it was followed by, maybe nothing. This camera seems to be a complete oddball and doesn't really fit the rest of the lineup. But if you have one of these, let's take a look at it and we'll go through the different features. In this video, we're going to talk about this camera's features and buttons and all of that stuff. And in the next video, we'll go through and talk about how to use everything. It'll be pretty quick because there's not a whole lot on this camera. So here on the top of the camera, we have the strap lugs. That's these right here. This is where you would connect your camera strap. This is the self-timer button. This is the off and on button. And unlike most of the electronic cameras, it actually turns off when you go to lock. It doesn't just leave the screen on and pretend to be off while it silently drains your battery. Here is the flash hot shoe. It uses the Minolta, now Sony, proprietary hot shoe shape. This is your LCD screen. This is your mode and program button. Here's your shutter release button. And this is your top control toggle switch. And we'll see how that works when because it's context sensitive in that it does a couple of different things depending on how what other buttons you're using with it. Here's the front of the camera. Over here we have the grip. This is the lens mount right here. We have the lens electronic contacts and the lens mounting indicator reference dot. This is the lens locking pin and the autofocus, manual focus drive screw right there. There we go. And if you put it down into manual focus, that retracts in the body. And if you put it in autofocus, it comes back out. Doesn't seem to like to do that too much when the power's not on. Nope, doesn't seem to like to do that when the power's on either. So I don't know. That's a little weird. Here is the lens release pin, or button right here. And you can see as I push this button, the lens release pin retracts into the lens mount. This is the side control toggle switch right here. Here is the camera's back, and here is the spot meter button. Now what I couldn't find out is if it's always a spot meter or if it's only a spot meter when you push the spot button. Here's the film type indicator window, and you can look through this to see what type of film you use or have loaded at any rate. Here's the bottom of the camera. We've got the serial number and the Japan, which is the country it was made in, symbol right, stuff right here. Here's the film rewind button if you would like to rewind it beforehand, I hope, because I really don't want to push that every time I have to rewind the film. Here's your battery chamber right there. Oh, and the tripod bushing. The side of the camera has the film back release, and you just push it down, and the film back is supposed to just pop open if the eyepiece cup is not in the way. Now you can see a couple of sensors up here. I believe on the 3XI that those are used to detect if your eye is close to the viewfinder. I'm not sure how that works with a rubber eye cup on it. I'm not really sure, 100% sure what those do, I won't lie. Here's the film cassette placement area. This is where you would place the film cassette to load it. A couple of film guide pin right there to help the film come out of the cassette properly. These two inner rails are the film guide rails that help keep the film flat on plane when the film pressure plate, which is on the back of the camera, we'll see in a second, presses down on them. These outside dots here are the outer guide rails and help to keep the film from moving up and down as it travels through the camera. This is the film cassette tension sprocket, which keeps the film from being pulled backwards by the film's springiness. It's coiled up, so it develops memory. It wants to pull itself back into the cassette. Here we have the film take-up spool, and this is the film leader reference mark. Next on the film back, here we have this guide and couple of guide rollers that direct the film into the film take-up spool. This is the film pressure plate that helps keep the film flat on plane as it travels through the camera's body. This is some foam so that the no light enters through the film window, and then a couple of springs to help the cassette stay properly aligned. Oh, and one other thing inside the camera's body I forgot to mention. Here are your DX code readers. So if you use film that has a DX code on it like this one does, the DX code readers will tell the camera what kind of film you have. And I'm going to guess that this camera probably requires DX code because I can't figure out any way on it to change or override the ISO that the to what you would like to shoot the film at. Okay, so some things not to do with this camera. You saw the mirror inside of it when we had the lens taken off of the body. Don't touch the mirror because it's surface coated with silver and the grease from your fingers will tarnish it, and you might be able to see in there. It's pretty clear that somebody has actually touched the mirror on this camera. There at the bottom, it looks like right here you can see behind my finger there's a curving bit of tarnish. And then right over here as well, somebody's thumb just touched that mirror at some point, some number of years ago, and there's a... Anyway, that's it's not perfect anymore, to say the least. In addition to not touching the mirror, don't touch the shutter, because if you put your finger in the shutter or if you get your finger oils on the shutter, those are both good ways to brick an otherwise perfectly good camera. Don't leave your camera or lenses in your car because heat will build up inside the car and the oils that keep things properly lubricated will get thin and go to places that they're not supposed to. In a camera with electronics, they can short out the electronics, worst case, or they can, when they get thicker again, when it's not as hot, they will simply slow down mechanical operations that aren't supposed to be lubricated, or the oils can get onto the aperture blades or the lens itself and cause some problems. If you leave your camera in the car during the winter, then extreme cold can cause the oils to break down and they can become very gummy. Also, don't store your camera in a plastic bag or box because that's a really good way for moisture to get in, and it will, and cause fungus to grow on your lens elements, or to have moisture cause issues with corrosion or shorting inside of your camera. Don't let this get wet. I guarantee you that it is not weather sealed and water getting inside of it would cause it to short out. And just remember that your camera is a precision tool and should be handled with care and respect. And as long as you take care of your camera will take care of you. So if this video was helpful, please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know I'm on the right track and that I'm making content which is useful and helpful to you. If you'd like to subscribe, you can do that, and then you'll find out when I have more videos about cameras and photography being released. If you have questions or comments about this camera, please leave them in the comments section below, and I am pretty good about responding fairly quickly. If you have suggestions for other videos, please leave those below as well, and if I have the equipment and technical know-how, I'm more than happy to make those. And one last thing before we go. Thank you guys for watching, and take great photos.